Good morning, everybody, and welcome to This Week in AI. I'm Heather. I'm the founder of the AI Edit, where I help B2B leaders grow their businesses in the age of AI. And every week, I pick 3 AI stories that matter most for anyone running or building a business. What happened, what it actually means, and why you should care. This week, South Korea is giving elderly people who live alone an AI doll to talk to. A Cambridge academic has written the most optimistic piece about AI and jobs that I've read for a while. And I'd like to think he's right. And Anthropic, the company that spent March winning the AI trust war, has just built something very, very dangerous. So we are going to get started on those. Let me share my screen quickly. I hope that works. There you go. Okay, so we're going to get started with this Claude Mythos story. So Anthropic built a model that can break into any computer on Earth. And then they decided not to sell it. So Anthropic was training a new model to be really, really good at writing code. That was the goal, better code. What they got as a side effect was something that they weren't expecting, which was a model that can break into computers. So here's the simple version of why those two things are connected. Writing code and breaking into systems use a lot of the same skills. You need to understand how software works, find the weak points, and know what to do with them. Anthropic's new model, called Mythos, got so good at code that it accidentally became one of the most capable hacking tools ever built. In testing, it found security weaknesses in every major operating system and every major web browser. Some of those weaknesses had been sitting there for decades without anyone finding them because it's a very specialized skill. And Mythos found them in weeks. And then it worked out how to use them by itself without being asked how. So it was kind of 83% successful at that as well. So Anthropic looked at what they'd built and made a decision. They wouldn't release it publicly. Instead, they've given private access to around 40 companies, including, of course, all the big enterprises that always get private access to everything first. So Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, to use it defensively, to find the weaknesses in their own systems before someone else does. Now, screw the millions of small businesses and mid-sized businesses that don't get access to this first, but just going to widen the gap between the enterprises and the struggling small and mid-sized businesses. But this matters beyond Anthropic because they say that other companies are 6 to 18 months away from building something as powerful as Mythos, which means that the capability is coming regardless. The question is whether the world's defenses are ready. And interestingly, Anthropic accidentally leaked that Mythos existed in March when thousands of unpublished documents were left in an unsecured public database. The company that just found decades-old security holes in other people's software left its own front door open. My next story is I find pretty disturbing. A 70-year-old woman in Seoul, in South Korea, used to ride buses to nowhere because she was lonely. Now she talks to her AI companion doll. So some people might say that's a beautiful story. I feel very uncomfortable about it, and I think it's devastating. Maybe it's both. So this woman's name is An Soon, sorry. And her companion is called Hyodol, a combination of a doll and the Korean word for filial duty. So duty from your children to the parents, right? It wakes her up in the morning, greets her when she comes home from her part-time job, and it plays Buddhist scriptures to help her sleep. And it runs on ChatGPT. When she cuddles the doll, its cheeks blush. Hyodol has been the best gift for me, she said. It's like a granddaughter or a friend. So South Korea is a super age society. The over 65s make up a fifth of the population, and a fifth of those live alone. The country has some of the highest rates of senior poverty, depression, and suicide in the developed world, and it has a massive shortfall of 190,000 care workers, which is expected to reach 1.5 million by 2032. So Hayadol is kind of existing because the humans aren't there. Already 140,000 units have been distributed across South Korea through government welfare programs. And the device monitors health, alerts family members or social workers in emergencies. And by all accounts, it does seem to reduce reported loneliness. There's a similar program in New York placing robots with isolated older adults, and that reported that 94% of users experienced a decrease in loneliness. Now, I'm sure that's not a peer-reviewed study, but still, it's not nothing. But it raises so many questions for me. This device listens all day. Voice records are used for internal training. User data is stored in the cloud for 3 years. The CEO's position on them is really clear. Saving elders' lives should take precedence over concerns about their privacy. She may be right, but that's a significant decision being made on behalf of some of the most vulnerable people in society who are perhaps least equipped to understand and contest it. And then there's the big question that the FT doesn't ask in this article. We've built a ChatGPT powered doll to provide companionship to elderly people living alone because we decided collectively that this was easier than building a society in which they weren't alone. Doll fills these gaps, but who created the gaps? The technology's coming. The elder care robot market is going to reach billions by 2030. It already speaks English, Hayadol, and runs pilots in New York and the Netherlands. So the question isn't whether it works, it's more about what it says about us, that we need it. My final story is more of a positive one, right? We've been so busy worrying about what AI will take for us that we haven't stopped to think about what it might give us back. And this is a Cambridge academic who published a piece in the FT this week arguing that the idea that AI will make our lives meaningless is based on 3 fallacies. The first is that humans need to be the best at something for it to be meaningful. And he disagrees with that. You know, most people run marathons not thinking they're going to be the best at running marathons. And so meaning doesn't come from winning, it comes from doing. The second fallacy is that meaningless requires struggle. If AI handles all the hard things, the fear is that we'll become infantilized. But he points out that most modern jobs aren't epic struggles. And there's no, if the basics are covered, we're then free to pursue what Maslow called the higher needs: belonging, purpose, self-actualization. So is that an opportunity or is it dystopia? The third fallacy is the assumption that what we currently call work is the best possible use of human time. Most of what we consider work has only existed for a few decades. And it's not obvious that our ancestors would look at somebody sitting at a desk sending emails and think, yes, that's a meaningful life. And it's also not clear that we'll mourn its loss. So the writer ends with a quote from Bertrand Russell, written in 1932. The wise use of leisure is a product of civilization and education. So we have a chance to build something better that requires good policy, better welfare systems, and investment in education, community, and access to nature. None of that's guaranteed, but it is possible. So that is a very optimistic story on the use of AI, probably the most optimistic one that I've covered for a while. So that's this week in AI. Sorry about the technical glitch at the start. I am learning this YouTube live thing, and I made it complicated by streaming through a piece of software that was unnecessary, and that caused a glitch at the start. But 3 different stories this week, one uncomfortable, one genuinely helpful, and one that's a reminder that even the good guys have bad weeks. My monthly insider briefing goes much deeper. We cover 30 stories in 30 minutes once a month, and it's on the 30th of April this month. Free, and the link is in the description, or if it's not in the description now, it will be in a minute. And that's where I cover everything that I don't have time for here. So I will see you next Friday for This Week in AI, where I will be properly set up, I promise. And on the 30th for my 30-minute April in AI session. So thanks very much, everybody. And now how do I end the session?